Welcome to Digital Transformers, the show that connects you with what you need to build, manage, and operate your digital supply chain. Join your host in a timely discussion on new and future business models with industry-leading executives. The show will reveal global customer expectations, real-world deployment challenges, and the value of advanced business technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain, and robotic process engineering. And now, we bring you Digital Transformers.
Hello, everyone. This is Kevin L. Jackson, and welcome to Digital Transformers. Data management is fundamental to modern global business, and this includes providing structured and unstructured data storage, the management and retrieval, or making those key decisions, understanding your customers, the financial transactions, and automation. Without databases and the adjacent data management technologies, businesses would just struggle with their inefficiencies or poor data organization, and they would not be able to scale their operations. And one of the companies, if not the company, that is really leading the effective use of data is Oracle Corporation, which holds the largest market share in the database technology sector. And they have been a dominant player for decades. But they've also extended into the adjacent spaces with all kinds of data management technologies, from NoSQL and JSON to blockchain. And with a bit of background, you may wonder, well, what is Oracle doing today in the blockchain and cloud computing era? Well, I had that question myself. So I asked Mr. Mark Rakhmilevich, the Group Vice President of Product Management and Development for Mission Critical Technologies, to the show. Mark leads Oracle's efforts in fintech, blockchain, and transaction management at Oracle. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thanks, Kevin. Great to be with you.
I tell you, you may not know, but I just realized that we share some career history. I was at IBM from 2000.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I was part of the pervasive computing group, is what they called it. And I was a worldwide sales executive for mobile, wireless, and voice. It looks like I started a few years after you left, but could you share a little bit about the rest of your distinguished career?
Sure, yeah, happy to do so. I started in IBM right after college. This was back east. I was really interested in distributed technologies. When I was doing my computer science degree, bachelor's and later master's, a lot of it was focused on distributed systems. And IBM was doing a lot of interesting, innovative work in that space. So I got to see it from the ground up, as a software engineer, and then later on started managing software development and got involved with product management and closer worked with customers who were deploying and using our solutions. But one way or another, I always found myself coming back to distributed systems and distributed technologies. Of course, back then, it took a little bit different form. We talked about, multiple servers running maybe cluster software in a data center, maybe even across multiple data centers, right, within a company. And you sort of fast forward a few decades later, I won't say exactly how many decades. And now...
Don't get that secret away.
Yeah. We're now at a point where we're basically running decentralized networks across not just data centers, across multiple banks and countries. And we are trying to still leverage all of the value propositions and benefits that decentralization and distributed computing can bring across multiple organizations. But of course, we have much more sophisticated capabilities now with the blockchain, consensus mechanisms, and we're beginning to see how that's transforming not just financial services industry, definitely it's there, but also many other industries. So I've started in IBM. I then worked at a number of companies in PKI and cryptography space. So I have a bit of a background in public-private key cryptography, certificate authorities, and all of that. Then I ended up working for companies in business process optimization, workflow, orchestration technology space. So again, talking about not just how we run things in the distributed world, how we make them work together and orchestrate across them. And I have joined BEA Systems, which was one of the leaders in distributed systems and application servers in 2005. And a few years later, in 2008, Oracle decided to acquire IBM. And we had came into Oracle, our team, and to this day, the same team staying together pretty much with our focus on working on distributed technologies. Back then, this was clustered application servers like Oracle. Now it's called Oracle, but back then BEA Tuxedo, which was application server pre-Java. And then you have WebLogic, which is a Java J2E application server, SOA capabilities, service-oriented architectures, and all of that stuff. And then as we brought a lot of that middleware into Oracle, a few years later, we saw the emergence of blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, smart contracts. And in around 2015 and 16, we started asking the question about how does that technology resonate? Will it resonate with our pretty much bread and butter enterprise customers, right? Oracle customer base, companies, enterprises, small and large, government organizations as well. And so the question was, does any of it really, is any of it relevant? We began to think that there are things you can do in a business-to-business world or bank-to-bank world using those technologies. And so we've decided that we needed to really expand our capabilities in distributed transaction management into the blockchain world. So we have joined, I believe, 2017 Hyperledger Foundation, which was one of the stronger consortiums around blockchain technologies. And we have built a platform leveraging, this was under Linux Foundation umbrella. They had an open source project called Hyperledger Fabric, which was one of the stronger blockchain frameworks out there, suitable for high performance, scalability, privacy, confidentiality requirements, and those types of features. And so we decided to start with that technology and build an enterprise-grade set of offerings around that. We've introduced our blockchain platform built around Hyperledger Fabric as a cloud offering in 2018 in Oracle Cloud. There's blockchain as a service. And a few years later, we realized that there are organizations that are not necessarily ready to go into Oracle Cloud. You might have government organizations that value data residence and data sovereignty, or maybe in some countries, this is particularly difficult. So we created an on-premises version, which is available as Oracle Blockchain Platform Enterprise Edition. And it can be deployed on premises, or it can be deployed in other clouds, multi-cloud options, basically, because it's all based on Kubernetes containers. So you can run it pretty much in almost any Kubernetes environment. So between that and our blockchain platform in the cloud, blockchain as a service, we have started working across a number of different industries in that space. So Oracle has very broad range of customers across financial services, retail, manufacturing, public sector, healthcare, logistics, and we found interesting blockchain use cases, enterprise blockchain use cases in many of them, and have built a large number of customers leveraging our platform across many of those industries. In a few years after we started this effort, we really saw the emergence of tokenization in enterprise and strong interest in applying digital assets and tokenization capabilities. Because Hyperledger Fabric did not have a native token implementation, we decided we need to build those capabilities, and we essentially modeled on Ethereum specs and other specs like Token Taxonomy Framework, ETF. We modeled tokenization implementation on Hyperledger Fabric, which companies started adopting. And that led to more digital asset capabilities, focus on tokenization in terms of payments, maybe micropayments, or actually our tokenization support now ranges from micropayments to central bank digital currencies, where you have very large volume payments. So it kind of covers that gamut.
Yeah, but I remember those days, WebLogic and the traditional services-oriented architectures. Your customer base is very conservative. So wasn't it kind of scary for them to look at this newfangled stuff, especially at the time when you were transitioning?
Yeah, so when we started looking at this in, let's say, 2018, when we launched our blockchain platform, it was something that for most enterprises was pretty scary and unknown. So we had to do a lot of education, right? For many people at the time, it was, blockchain, what is a Bitcoin? Why would we care about that, right? So we had to explain, actually, Bitcoin is one application. There is a lot of underlying technologies that are valuable that we are leveraging in an enterprise context. And the fact that Oracle and BA before that has a strong history in enterprise systems, we understand something about how to build, deploy, and run and manage enterprise scale, bank scale systems that manage hundreds of thousands of transactions per second in performance, that have highest levels of security and confidentiality on them, managed in terms of the operations management and monitoring, and very strong SLAs. That helped, I think, to mitigate some of the questions and concerns that they had. We had introduced, I think we were the only one, might still be the only one, blockchain cloud service with a committed availability SLAs. If you deploy our enterprise edition, which is sort of production grade capability Oracle blockchain platform, we commit to delivering 99.95% availability in our cloud. And it's financially backed. You can actually, if we don't deliver that, you can, claim credits for your cloud use and other things. So it's financially backed, high availability statement. But we will go beyond that as well. We have now been working in central bank digital currency space for a few years. And we increasingly hear requirements from banks about disaster recovery, cross-region, cross-cloud, a single data center, no matter how good of an availability you're going to provide in there, how strong the capability. And we have typically in cloud regions multiple data centers, availability domains, like 20 miles apart. So in case you have an outage of some sort, a natural disaster. But if you're deploying in some places that have bigger scale disasters, right? 20 miles apart is not good enough. They want to be in different parts, like, of the country, of the world sometimes. And so we actually created what we call maximum availability deployment across multiple cloud regions with our blockchain platform. So this can run nonstop, no matter even if you lose connectivity, wherever you might be in a particular location. And those kinds of capabilities that gives them the bank-grade resilience, availability, high performance. So we have done a lot of work to optimize Hyperledger Fabric performance, confidentiality, security in depth, right? Not just sort of our cloud security that's built in at many levels, but also within the blockchain environment. Even if you are a member of the blockchain network as an organization, that still doesn't mean that you should be able to see everything that's going on. There is access control, fine-grained access control that we've built in, and a number of other things. Just recently with digital assets, we found that in many deployments of digital assets, people are really concerned about business confidentiality, right? Transaction data, right? Interbank transfers, bank A to bank B is on the ledger, and bank C that has no business can see the data because they're part of the network, right? So it's an interbank network with central bank and other banks in there. So we've introduced some recently capabilities around confidential payments, which applies something called the Pedersen commitment, which is a cryptographic concept that allows you to encode in a way that nobody except participants of the transaction can see the actual details of that. And so we're providing confidentiality and privacy while still persisting data in the shared ledger so the banks can verify everything is appropriate and all of the rules are maintained and so on.
Well, I tell you, you are certainly in a hot technology space right now. And your title, Mission Critical and blockchain, is you don't see that often together. Can you tell me a little bit more about your role with respect to Mission Critical? How do your conversations go when you go to a client or a customer and they have real, you mentioned like SLAs and making sure that you have data sovereignty and the changing laws. How do you deal with this in your role?
Mission Critical Technologies is a group within our product development organization that deals with the highest levels of availability, the most critical systems, right? It started, of course, with Oracle database, which became the mainstay of many enterprises, financial institutions, government entities, and so on, right? The world runs on Oracle database in its various forms. And it was really important to be able to provide highest levels of availability, replication, and so on, to be able to run those businesses and government organizations 24/7. And 5 nines, 6 nines of availability is our day-to-day job. We're built to deliver those kinds of availability. When you start bringing in other technologies like blockchain, right, we were specifically asked to become part of this mission critical systems organization. And within that, there's different product areas. My group is responsible for transaction management, good old Tuxedo distributed systems clusters. It's responsible for blockchain technologies. And now, most recently, something we are working on called fintech data platform, which
Okay.
is an evolution of a blockchain platform into a broader set of capabilities focused on the regulated financial industry. But we recognize that all of those systems, if they're going to be used in those kinds of organizations, enterprises, banks, central banks, etc., they're going to be mission critical. If you're going to deploy an interbank network using CBDC in a country, that's a national scale infrastructure, right?
Mhm.
Something goes wrong, it's not just one company or one bank that's impacted. It's basically the entire economy of the country is impacted because it cannot handle and process payments and settlements. We take that very seriously. We believe that we have a very strong experience and sort of basic principles that have guided our approach in mission critical systems and distributed technologies overall that apply to fintech and blockchain technologies just as much as they apply to databases or WebLogic or Tuxedo or transaction management across multiple data centers.
Yeah, but you mentioned earlier Bitcoin. Everyone has heard about Bitcoin, but many are not aware of its link to blockchain. Could you maybe briefly describe that link and how this has really been leveraged in the financial services industry, especially since financial services is mission critical to us all?
Absolutely. We're either using it directly or we're working with customers who are involved in using it for settling their payments, right? Or PTC payments, if you will, right? So now, going back to Bitcoin, the principles behind Bitcoin essentially focused on decentralizing the compute and replicating the ledger, replicating the data. So you have multiple nodes around the country, around the world, that are storing the data and replicating, and the transactions that gets finalized and settlement of some sort is available now on multiple nodes. Now, this is a classical database replication problem. How do you achieve data replication in distributed systems, distributed databases, if you will, in a manner that's consistent and accurate, supports data integrity, and can be done in something close to real time? That's been a problem in computer science forever, right? Back to my days in college, this was a problem that people were discussing and writing papers about. There were famous algorithms, like Paxos, and I remember there was a gentleman by the name of Leslie Lamport, early on at DEC Corporation, and then a couple other kind of research institutions, and maybe later I think at Microsoft, who wrote some of the seminal papers on distributed technologies and actually proof systems to ensure that when you distribute things, distribute state replicating data, that is consistent. And I wrote my master's actually thesis related to one of his papers with some additional stuff. So when you start thinking about how do you implement something like blockchain, you have to figure out how to distribute the data, how to ensure consistency, that all of those nodes are going to have the same data, the same view of the transaction. And so you're replicating the data and you're making it possible for everybody to see it in near real time, right? You have those consensus mechanisms that are designed to achieve that. And again, it's a set of protocols across multiple nodes that achieve that consistent. In Bitcoin case, there was a specific implementation, but the concept of distributing the data across multiple nodes and achieving consistency and near real-time replication and so on was quickly propagated from Bitcoin to other environments, and that's where other blockchains started. All blockchains at their kind of core fundamental capabilities rely on distributed nodes and the consensus mechanisms that ensures that everybody can see the same data, that it's accurate, that it's not going to be tampered with, that it's going to be consistent across multiple nodes in near real time. Ethereum and all of the VM networks and many others. Now, there are different implementations and there are different ways of handling that depending on the different requirements that you're trying to meet. I'm sure you've heard of this famous CAP theorem in computer science that talks about the limitations, right? There are certain attributes that you can achieve in terms of availability, consistency, and so on, performance, and you can only really hit 2 out of the 3. You cannot achieve all 3 at the same time. So there are trade-offs, and there are workarounds, and there are things that you do. So different companies have implemented, different open source projects implemented this in their own ways. We believe that the mechanisms that have emerged in Hyperledger community in particular are some of the best in terms of their applicability in a permissioned blockchain environment, because our customers are companies, enterprises, government organizations. They prefer permissioned blockchains where you have known entities that are participating, right? There is always, this question about, is a permission network a walled garden? Well, in a certain sense, it is a walled garden, but it has usually gates out in terms of interoperability with other networks out there, right? So you can connect them together. And interoperability is a big topic that we have been focusing on over the last few years in order to ensure that this emerging, particularly financial ecosystem with digital assets, again, one of the things that people like about digital assets on blockchain is asset portability. I want to be able to take an asset that I have, whether it's a coin or a collectible item or some luxury goods records or whatever, from one network to another. And so portability requires that you have a way of consistently, with atomicity principles, be able to actually transition an asset from one blockchain network to another. Maybe, they're running the same technology, maybe they're running different technologies. So that's a very significant area of research, and there is a lot of trials, a lot of companies are doing things in that area. We have done some work as well, because ultimately that interoperability is what's going to allow digital assets to come to some kind of a strong production grade, mature deployments in financial services industry. If you think today, when you are doing a payment from one company to another and it's going through your individual banks, and there's maybe central banks involved, right? And correspondent banking networks and all of those things, that unit of payment, it might change currency, right? So you might transfer it from $1 to €1 or something. But the value is ultimately staying the same, right? So it went through a whole bunch of banks. And at the end, it ended up in the account of this other company that's receiving a payment on an invoice, let's say. And the value is the same. It means the same thing, right? There may be a currency adjustment, foreign exchange, etc. But that's not the case today with digital assets, because they're very siloed. Every implementation, every ledger, right, has its own thing. And when you're trying to transfer, there is all kinds of, first of all, there are risks, settlement risks, but there is also a risk in terms of not being able to achieve real-time finality of settlement, legal finality, which has very specific implications, contractual implications, right? If you're going to do digital assets in securities markets, right, capital markets, there is this significant emphasis on implementation of delivery versus payment settlement model. That's an important model to ensure that you can make a payment for let's say you're buying a bond. So the settlement amount is delivered into bondholder's account, and the bond is delivered into your account at the same time, atomically. Today, in the financial markets, that doesn't happen because you rely on financial messaging. You are not actually trying to update the state data on multiple ledgers at the same time. But that's what digital assets need to do. That's where we need to go to in order to solve the inefficiencies. The reason we have long delays, the reason that we have high fees, and so on, is because there is a lot of financial messaging that's asynchronous. We have a lot of intermediaries in that space. So applying digital assets into that world allows you, once you have the capability to actually have cross-ledger settlement, atomic settlement, is what Bank for International Settlements is referring to as unified ledgers, right? To protect singleness of money, that's their term. And once you have that, then you can really see a significant innovation happening where digital assets will become a strong player in any kind of financial services, whether it's trade finance, when you are paying on an invoice, buying, selling, purchase orders, an invoice kind of business, or maybe you're getting financing for your purchase order. So trade finance includes letters of credit and inventory financing and those kind of things. There's all kind of financial services out there associated with trade, real economy. And then you have financial services in capital markets, stocks and bonds, and settling those, issuing those. A lot of those processes today have been built for the world of financial messaging. There is high cost. There is long delays. If you have, in certain countries, central bank providing real-time gross settlement system, RTGS, for high-value payments interbank, and they typically work business hours, bankers' hours. And in some places, they have long holidays and they shut down and so on. So if the banks cannot settle, there is a risk, significant risk, that even if I have to wait overnight, by morning, something may change, right, in the financial world. Because in business, in retail, transactions and payments, everything is instant and everything's 24/7. So people are used to that. But banks are on a hook, right? So if you cannot settle until morning and you have that risk. So 24/7 settlement in interbank payments is one of the big drivers that we've seen in central bank digital currencies. Not the only one, but it's a significant one. And we're seeing a lot of other inefficiencies and costs being driven out of the systems. There was a study that was published that pointed out that trade finance, this is again, companies buying and selling goods and paying for them, and invoice being presented, invoice being financed.
Right.
I think I saw a Bloomberg article a while back. There is $50 billion of fraud in that.
Oh, just in those transactions alone.
Basically, in trade finance space, where people are presenting invoices for financing to multiple banks.
Yeah.
So you take an invoice and you say, hey, I've got this $50 million deal, but I need financing to make it happen. And you take it to Bank A, and then you take it to Bank B and Bank C, right? And
they all give you money.
And they all give you money, and it adds up
Yeah.
to, I think there was an estimate that Bloomberg published around $50 billion. You have high fees, even legitimate business, right? So cross-border payments, there's been an estimate that I think the cross-border trade is something like $23 trillion, and associated financial services fees for payments amount to about $120 billion. And that's not taking into account foreign exchange, FX costs. This is just fees for the actual payment processing across like this multitude of banking and intermediary companies, correspondent networks, SWIFT, all of that. Fintechs are trying to innovate in the space, and they're basically going to the same enterprises and saying, instead of paying whatever that amount is for this payment settlement transaction, I can settle it, I can handle it using digital assets for half the cost, maybe 10% of the cost. So banks are concerned about losing customers, losing business to fintechs, and they are trying to out-innovate themselves and get into the space because they know it's very strong competition, that their customers are going to vote with their wallets, ultimately.
Right,
and
right.
Be able to take advantage of the cost savings. And by the way, this payment that fintech can handle will be near real time. Whereas if you go through the standard traditional financial services, it takes 2 to 3 days. And in the middle, you don't have real visibility and transparency where it is until it actually lands on the other side. Sometimes in this world, 2 or 3 days is a long time to wait to settle a financial transaction.
Wow. I mean, with all the different aspects, interoperability across the blockchain, being able to settle this real-time settlement, the issues with, I guess, float, and even national sovereignty is all built into these issues. Are these trends or issues driving increased adoption of digital assets, or is it really scaring the industry? Is the fear outweighing the value?
Well, I think there is certainly a number of banks that are concerned about this and looking to get ahead of the competition.
Yeah.
So you've seen JP Morgan, for example, has been offering digital asset capabilities for a few years now. Citigroup announced something called Citi Token Services. They have been renovating and inventing kind of multiple generations of that. And they're providing this to their customers in trade finance space. Bank of New York Mellon has been doing a lot of this as well. HSBC has a digital asset platform called Orion. Societe Generale has a platform called Forge. So the leading banks are out there driving this pretty hard. But leading banks have the ability to attract the technical talent, and they have the funding and so on to build this on their own, right? So they can invest, they can bring a lot of startups together maybe and do the mesh and coordination of all those different technical capabilities.
Yeah.
And maybe build it on open source and build other things. But let's face it, there aren't that many banks that can afford to do it on their own. Many banks today running on traditional, IT software and technology from companies like Oracle and Microsoft and IBM and who knows, right? And so they are interested in solutions that come more prepackaged. They still want to tailor them and customize them, and they're typically, white labeled and all of that. But still, as more and more organizations want to get into the space, we think that there's going to be a need for technology vendors, for IT vendors to be able to provide those solutions. And Oracle is actually trying to lead in the space. We have just released, in fact, in February, our blockchain platform, Digital Assets Edition. And
Okay.
this is a platform, it's a comprehensive platform. It's built as an extension of our blockchain work, but we have taken it to the next level. And this is a platform that provides out-of-the-box capabilities to work with central bank digital currency projects, to work with deposit token ledgers, stable coins, as well as real-world assets, right? So things that we think about in maybe land records that government wants to maintain on a blockchain in
Real
many
world
countries.
tokenization. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or luxury goods, or maybe intellectual properties that you want to license, collectibles, what have you, right? There is all kinds of things there. Fractionalizing real estate transactions, all of those real world assets as well. So this platform is built to support out of the box all of those types of digital asset use cases with pre-built smart contracts, pre-built APIs for all of those use cases, as well as web applications, built-in real-time insights in terms of analytics, dashboards and visualizations, and so on. So we're trying to provide a comprehensive offering that's going to enable many companies to jump into digital asset space without having to hire PhDs in blockchain and digital assets, without having to spend years building this or dealing with a dozen startups trying to bring different technologies together and have the risks that they may not necessarily.
Integration risk.
Integration risk, regulatory compliance risks, right? There is a lot of real concern in financial regulatory world. You might have seen that in Europe, there has been a recent regulatory standard introduced called DORA, D-O-R-A, which is focused on resilience. And basically, the financial regulators are telling banks and asset managers and stock exchanges and everybody in financial services space in Europe that you have to make sure that your suppliers, whether it's a cloud provider or anybody else, can meet your regulatory obligations. And that's going to be a significant challenge, I think. We think that we can provide that. Oracle has a very strong footprint. We have 40 plus cloud regions around the world. So we are in many, many countries. And if we are not in a particular country, we're in the next neighboring country.
Yeah.
We have high availability, mission critical solutions that can support this. And this blockchain platform, Digital Asset Edition, which is an extension basically of our core blockchain platform, is going to help customers to innovate rapidly without some of the significant costs, without concerns about regulatory compliance, security, performance, scalability, because with Oracle, you get all of that in a box.
Well, it sounds like there's really, I guess, a battle between fintech and traditional financial industry, and it's the regulators that are kind of the referees. What do you hear from the banks and the asset managers and capital markets about their requirements? You mentioned a lot of new products and new offerings that Oracle is bringing out. Is that really moving the needle, or do the regulators have their thumb on the scale one way or the other?
Well, I think regulators have been expressing certain concerns, right? So if you look at what's been happening in the stablecoin world, there is a lot of concern about regulatory arbitrage, the risk it brings to financial system, right? You can launch a stablecoin, you can operate out of a country that maybe has weaker regulatory requirements than others. But if you're offering your stablecoin globally or in other countries, and they are all kind of exposed to the risk, if your stablecoin goes under because the regulatory oversight is very weak, requirements are very weak, that impacts not just people in that country, it impacts everybody who's holding this. And central banks have been ringing alarm bells to some extent about that. But what they're saying, I think, is the way I'm reading, I'm reading tea leaves, right? So I'm not a bank, I'm not a central banker, I'm on the technology side. But the tea leaves I'm reading, the reports I'm seeing, are basically suggesting that the focus that they're trying to bring into this is that, look, we need to provide the capabilities. People are using this because it satisfies certain unmet demands that financial services today do not.
Right.
Whether it's privacy, confidentiality, immediate settlement, and so on. So we need to innovate in the regulated side of the industry to meet those demands, but do it in a much more kind of regulated manner. And so you see Bank for International Settlements, for example, forging ahead with a number of innovative projects. There has been, over the last 3-4 years, a number of interbank projects that have been put together. Most recently, Project Agora that they have been working on over the last year. That involves 7 central banks 5 of which are global reserve currencies around the world, right? From euro, Swiss franc, UK pound, dollar, Fed Reserve is involved, yen, I think Central Bank of Mexico, and I believe Korea as well, and 40 plus commercial banks. The whole purpose here is to come up with this unified ledger architecture. Now, unified ledger does not mean everybody's on the same ledger. It's interoperability. It's a concept, right? That every ledger that you are running, Bank A might have a deposit token on one particular ledger, Bank B on another, correspondent banks on another, central banks might be using something else. But interoperability and ability to handle an end-to-end payment flow across borders, across different currency corridors and so on, is what they're aiming at. And I think that project is going to demonstrate a lot of innovative technology. They're still going through a lot of initial discussions, and there's going to be an implementation and reports issued and all of that. That's still ahead of us. But the requirements that they are contemplating meeting, and the fact that 40 commercial banks and 7 central banks are all getting together to try this out, says that there is big momentum, big appetite in the financial industry to provide those services, to meet those demands, to slash down the costs, to make settlements, cross-border settlements, possible in near real time as opposed to taking 2 or 3 days, and provide all of the innovative products and capabilities. Programmable payments, that's another big thing. That's very important, not just in B2B, but on the retail side, when you can create conditional situations and manage programmability for your transfers, if you will, for your payments, right? So you pay on delivery of goods. So you have something on a blockchain that indicates the goods been delivered, maybe some kind of a shipping notification. You have the other party saying this is an invoice that matches the purchase order. And you have real-time matching and reconciliation. Not somebody sitting in the back office looking at 2 sheets of paper, on their screen, small screen, but actually blockchain smart contract matching. And all of that then says, okay, all conditions been met, you can now issue and process a payment, right? And that payment will go across border, and within literally near real time, it would mean seconds, maybe less, sub-seconds, it hits all of the ledgers involved, right? So all of the ledgers involved in this process are updated with the state information, and it's all transparent and visible. That provides a lot of benefit in innovative services. It certainly helps to cut out a lot of opportunities for fraud.
Yeah, this is amazing. For the sake of transparency, I'm going to make sure the audience knows one of the other hats I wear is that I'm the operations executive for the National DigiFoundry. And Oracle will be providing cloud and blockchain services for our national DigiToken. That's the digital asset that we use to manage our services. So, Mark, we're really excited about our transition to Oracle. And all this leading work that you have been doing sounds really exciting. What type of value does that bring to our members that are really looking to leverage digital assets to create real business models?
No, absolutely. So I think that there is a strong value whether you are a financial services firm, ability to provide 24/7 settlement, ability to operate with full transparency, reduce costs, eliminate many intermediaries, provide very resilient infrastructure. All of those things are very important to financial services. For the rest of us who are customers of financial services, who actually do payments and do transactions and all of that, it basically reduces the costs. It allows us to provide and leverage those more advanced capabilities, right? It reduces risk quite a bit today in the system. You have a lot of risk factors, and it provides innovative services like programmable payments, right? I can set up something on my account that will automate some of the payment transactions, whether I'm a company or an individual, based on those conditions, and have those be enforced through a smart contract.
Excellent. So apologies, but I really appreciate your time and perspective today, but our time has actually come to an end. How can the audience learn more about Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, your blockchain services, and the mission critical aspects of what you can provide?
Sure. So first of all, I'm on LinkedIn. So if anybody wants to connect, just ping me on LinkedIn. Mention that you saw the Digital Transformers and there's a session with Kevin. Thank you for inviting me, first of all, Kevin. I really appreciate, enjoyed having this conversation. And then you can follow up. We have a lot of materials available. You can go, first of all, to oracle.com/blockchain.
Okay.
That's our pillar page for all of our blockchain capabilities. You can go to cloud.oracle.com to see all of the cloud capabilities that we provide, and you can sign up even for free trials. Oracle offers free cloud services, and you can, whether it's blockchain or anything else, we have some of the more advanced capabilities in the cloud world, whether it's basic infrastructure, compute services, Kubernetes, etc., blockchain developer services, databases of all sorts, as well as AI. We have been really pushing very hard in AI space, and Oracle's been innovating quite a bit, partnering with many LLM models. So you could actually use services where you can just checkbox and select which LLM models you want to work with, and we provide a lot of value on top of that. Our cloud offerings are pretty extensive, and we have free trials available for you to try. You can explore this. And then, like I said, what I would suggest was the blockchain. So oracle.com/blockchain is a pillar page, but we have a lot of really dynamic information we're publishing on our blog. So I run the Oracle blockchain blog, and that's available at blogs.oracle.com/blockchain. You'll see an announcement about digital asset right there. It's the most recent post there. And you'll see a lot of other things we've done across many industries over the years.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. And we'll make sure that those links are available on the show page. Thank you for all that information and resources. And in closing, I would like to express my thanks for all the support we receive from Supply Chain Now, and invite everyone to check out their wide variety of industry thought leadership at supplychainnow.com. You can find Digital Transformers wherever you get your podcasts. So please be sure to subscribe. So on behalf of the entire team here at Digital Transformers, this is Kevin Jackson wishing all of our listeners a bright and transformational future. We'll see you next time on Digital Transformers.
Thank you for supporting Digital Transformers and for being a part of our global Supply Chain Now community. Please check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com. Make sure you subscribe to Digital Transformers anywhere you listen to or view the show, and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Digital Transformers.